Free agency is definitely not over yet, as the Detroit Lions have reportedly went out and signed another out-of-house option. And today, we're going to be diving into Rock Ya-Sin. So let's get right into it. So yes, the Detroit Lions have made another move, and they've added some cornerback depth, which was very much needed. Emmanuel Mosley being a free agent, Kendall Vildor signing elsewhere. The Lions just needed depth. I think DJ Reed was fantastic. I love the cornerback room, especially in the top end, but we definitely needed to add some depth to that positional group. And the Lions went with wide corner depth here today with Rock Ya-Sin, the 28-year-old corner. Now, we've talked about him a little bit in passing before as a potential option in free agency. Never done a real breakdown on the player, though, because, of course, we've never signed him, but that will happen a little bit later down the road. But when I saw this name, I got to be honest, I was pretty fired up because Rock Ya-Sin's always been a guy that's been in the mix for me as someone that I thought that, hey, schematically, this could make some sense. He could play man coverage. He's a physical cornerback. And now the Lions have finally pulled that trigger after coming off a season where San Fran, he just played over about 50 snaps, the Detroit Lions. So I'm going to assume that the details of this contract are going to be very favorable for the Detroit Lions. But this is a player that was a former second-round pick that athletically, in terms of just pure long speed, question marks, ran a 4.5 140, but was very explosive, had the nearly 40-inch vertical jump, and just needed a lot of technical things cleaned up coming out of the draft. Fortunately, he's bounced around the league a little bit, but found some consistency specifically with the Raiders. One, because of reliability as a tackler, that sticks. And then also as a cornerback, while he wasn't the consistent playmaker, he was someone that you could rely on as a number two. Now for the Lions, that's exactly what we'll be looking for here to kind of replace Kendall Vildor. And I think that they went with a player that schematically makes a ton of sense. I think he's best built to play in a press coverage or an off-man coverage scheme that can be physical, that can get hands on you at the line of scrimmage, and will step down and play the run specifically, which is actually one of the, interestingly enough, one of the spots I thought Kendall Vildor maybe took a step back this past season. I thought he had continued to improve in coverage, but he maybe took a little bit of a step back there in terms of run support. I said he's a physical corner. He's built really well. His frame is very filled out. He's strong in the upper body. You'll see this as a run defender specifically. And he's also schematically had a lot of experience in what the Lions are probably going to do. He's been utilized in kind of that half-turn coverage style, I think maybe even more so with Baltimore before he even got to San Francisco and kind of those cover three looks specifically. I don't think that's his best spot, but he's been used there. So you'll see glimpses of him overlapping coverage. You'll see some of his awareness in cover four, things like that. You'll see the discipline within his game, his ability to kind of understand, okay, I got to protect the seam here, or let me protect my blind spot. You'll see an awareness in those coverage assignments specifically, which will translate well. And that's where you also see some of the pace. He does a nice job of not getting too deep in some of those coverage assignments as a deep third, for example, where he's not overplaying too far, where he can't get back into the play. He tends to play with really nice controlled pace. And I think that's one of the biggest strengths for Rock Ya-Sin is he typically plays with a really nice balanced and grounded play style. Meaning that he doesn't always show to be the most explosive. He's always so grounded in terms of it's easy for him to react because he's balanced, he's under control, and that allows him to get from point to point really well. And I think that helps him a ton when he's working in some of those more off-coverage assignments. However, he also carries the flip side, which is the short area footwork, which opens up so much press flexibility specifically. And you'll see this, and he can work with extended releases off the line of scrimmage. He can really mirror footwork off the line if he's trying to play a press mirror technique specifically, where he's trying to just stay on top of the route. He shows the capability to do that with just in his footwork alone. He has that short area of foot quickness, which stands out. And I think that he's shown patience, specifically from what I've seen so far, against single step releases. Now, he does still flash the issues of, for example, transitioning his hips too quickly, right? Declaring too early. Then he's forced to kind of recover, which he recovers nicely because it's still very balanced. He recovers nicely. He shows the hip flexion to do it. He's really controlled, not get panicked. He's pretty calm in those spots, but he does declare his hips a little bit early, and he can also get caught being a little bit sluggish, I think, off the line. So when you get him against some of the smaller, shiftier receivers off the ball, that could be a little bit of an issue in some of those press spots, which is why I don't think he's, from what I've seen so far, necessarily built to be like a great slot cornerback for you specifically. Love his length at the top of the route, so he's physical. We've seen this against Jamar Chase going a year ago where he's breaking up passes in the end zone. Even passes that are caught against him, he's pretty physical, really closes airspace at the catch point, but I think he does a nice job. He's not overly physical. He doesn't feel grabby, but he feels like he plays with a nice low pad level, settles himself on the ground, plays wide, and just uses that physicality with really nice timing at the catch point. I mean, sometimes I'd like to see maybe more ball production specifically, more of kind of the twitchiness show up at the catch point, but overall, he's going to make it so that it's a small airspace. It's a tight window that the ball has to be thrown into, which again is kind of what the Lions have been going after with all of their cornerbacks specifically. And that's where you'll see the length show up specifically there. There is some patience in his pedal from off-man coverage. Again, going back to kind of the balance within his game, he does showcase patience in those spots. The control you'll see within his eye balance when working off-man coverage to balance quarterback and man, and that allows him to get some early jumps or at least set his leverage properly. And then again, again, back to the footwork aspect, he can pedal from an off-man coverage alignment and kind of stick on top of the early stem with some of the short area foot quickness that he shows. And then there's a calmness where when it breaks vertically and when he tries to transition, to not overreact, but then just kind of ride the hip and get vertical. Now, that can lead to him getting stacked occasionally without some of the best long speed, but he does show a lot of patience in those spots. I talked about the recovery hips, the fast feet, the fast short area quickness specifically, and he does show enough of a burst. I think there's a reactiveness because he is balanced typically. There's enough of a burst reactively in press coverage to get into the stem of routes, to work with drag routes when he is balanced, when he's more light on his toes. And that's where the fluidity also shows up in terms of some of the recovery, maybe if he declares early, for example. He has the capability through the stem of routes to be able to lean through routes, to be able to find some of that stickiness and really be able to lash through like level 2 breaks. Maybe it's a skinny post, kind of stay lashed in those spots. Even through some of the deeper cuts and the deep sinks, he can really kind of latch himself and stay stuck when he gets in the hip early and be able to kind of ride that through the rep. And that's where the length can also show up as well. But I like the leverage that he plays with. You'll see this in half turn coverage specifically. There's a leverage to his game. His balance tends to stay lean towards the front shoulder. That way he can break on the ball a lot easier. Okay. And that's where, again, the burst isn't fantastic, but he keeps himself at least leveraged enough that he can get down and make plays on the football. Now, the flip side there as well is I don't think he shows the most fluidity in these spots. I don't think he always like works himself perfectly over top of routes and he can allow guys to kind of attack his blind spot. Fast hips, the physicality within his game, the top of the route strength, which is big as well, because you think of DJ Reed, that's not his strength. It's kind of the opposite. So there's a little bit of kind of a give and take here. You get kind of the opposite approach, which is nice to kind of have that offset of balance. And he's physical against the run. And again, that fits the lines. Physicality against the run always works here. Some of my knocks, as I touched on, I don't think he's the most explosive player, and you'll see that just in some of his breaks specifically. But at the catch point, that's where you want to see some of that explosiveness, climb the ladder, and he's capable in those spots. The transition to plant and drive is, to me, maybe just average, if anything, but especially in half turn, it doesn't feel fantastic there. Player a little bit too early, as touched on. Prove his leverage when working in off coverage to settle himself into better opportunities to actually make a play on the ball, or even at times be a little bit more aggressive when he's working in half turn to really squeeze routes, because I don't see that burst to kind of close airspace, that if he doesn't squeeze it early, he's going to allow some receptions. And even you'll see that when overlapping coverage, there's an awareness like pass it off here, but I feel like he just gives too much room, creates too much airspace when he has to play so far off the ball consistently. I just don't think that's his game. Some sluggishness occasionally off the ball. So look, there's a reason that this player is available. There's been inconsistencies there. There's been trying to find the right scheme fit. I do think the Lions fit well. I think there's going to be inconsistencies here, but you think about what we lost in Vildor. You lost a guy that was willing to jam guys at the line, that was strong in the upper body. That's what he is, that has that foot quickness. Maybe doesn't have the greatest long speed. I think Vildor was a little bit faster in terms of just pure long speed. And, you know, again, he may not have the most on-ball production, but he does have pass breakups. Like last season alone, if you go back to 2023, he allowed a 50% completion percentage, which is really nice because he collapses airspace, 4 pass breakups that season, but a 118 pass rating. You may not get as many plays on the football as you would like. It's a great trait to have if you could do that, especially in man coverage, but they're looking for guys to close airspace, and that's something that he's very comfortable at doing. So I'm pretty pumped up for this signing, truly. Like, I think he's in a competition to actually make the 53, but I think he's in a good spot to also make the 53 because I think he's going to fit how the Lions want to play. I think he can immediately transition to special teams at worst to just get himself on the field, and then if the Lions want to add a draft pick to that, I think he's going to have a good opportunity within the battle here that the Lions will have if they draft another corner, if they go sign in UDFA, something like that, because of his schematic fit. So welcome Rock Ya-Sin to the Lions. I'm pretty excited about this one. Let me know your thoughts, comments below. We'll eventually do a full breakdown video, but for now, your thoughts, comments below. Thank you for watching, and I'm out.